Okay, and welcome to the podcast. I am here with Eli Henderson, my buddy from Crossfire Strength and Conditioning. We met there when you joined the gym, probably
A few months ago.
Yeah, 3 or 4 months ago. And Joe Klempa said, you should have Eli on your podcast. And after all the times I was confused about everything about you, from the fact that at first I think we joke around that I thought you were Amish. And because your name was Eli and because you have a beard, which is talk about judging a book by its cover. And then for some reason I thought you were a welder, which doesn't make any sense. And then I found out that you actually take care of the animals up here at West Lib, and it's well, why don't you kind of explain what you do up here?
Well, I'm a zoo science major, and this summer I was the intern, so there was one spot available, and I applied and got it. So I spent the summer taking care of all the animals up here and doing some research that'll come out probably in September at the symposium.
Cool. So tell me a little bit more about your major, zoo science major.
So technically it's zoo science and applied conservation, and we work hand in hand with the Ogleby Good Zoo. So it's pretty much just anybody that's interested in working at a zoo, animal husbandry, field work with animals, that kind of thing, rehab. A lot of the classes, so we have animal-specific classes like mammalogy, and right now I'm in ornithology, but they're also specific to zoos. So my ornithology class is actually taught by the director of the Good Zoo, Joe Greathouse.
Oh, that's awesome.
Mm-hmm.
So is it your goal to work in a zoo or conservation?
It's not. Mine is more of on the conservation ends of things, probably some sort of field job with the DNR or something like that. But
okay, cool. Now you were telling me that some of the different animals that you look after up here, or that you did over the summer.
Right. So in this room here that we're sitting in right now, there's Mort, who is a black and white Argentine tegu. There is a false water cobra. There's Norbert, our Asian water monitor. I don't know if you looked at him, but he's about 6.5 feet long. He's kind of our mascot. And then any day now, our sloth Sweet Pea should be coming in and staying with us on Mondays, Tuesdays, and Wednesdays. She's still young, so we don't want her up here all the time because she needs special care because she's young and still relatively fragile. But we're really excited to have her up here and the public get to see her. You
were saying that she had to go home with one of the people, or that she was staying with?
Right. She does go home with some of the professors, or mostly the professors, or occasionally our one, the girl who oversees everything, basically, because she's young and relatively fragile.
Wow, she needs that much care.
Right.
Can they walk on their feet with the?
She can kind of slide along, and my understanding of it is that adults can kind of do like a waddle thing for a little while, but not for real long. They're surprisingly quick on the ground, though.
Really?
Mm-hmm.
But mostly they're designed to be in a tree, hanging upside down most of their life?
Right.
Wow. That's an interesting animal. There's probably nothing quite like it, is there?
I don't think so, no. I mean, they have incredibly slow metabolism. They actually only go to the bathroom roughly once a week.
Wow.
So they just spend a lot of time in the trees hanging out.
Wow. That's and that's great that West Lib has one.
Right, yeah.
What's your favorite animal up here?
Definitely Norbert, our Asian water monitor over there. He's actually the subject of my research this summer. I was originally going to do research on training him. I actually had him target trained fairly reliably, so I have a wooden dowel rod with a tennis ball on the end of it, and I place the tennis ball wherever I want him to go, and he walks over and touches his nose, and I'll treat him with a piece of chicken.
Wow.
And I had him doing that pretty reliably at one point, and I tapered off because I wanted to start fresh for my research, and he had actually some medical issues, and then we had some issues with heating and cooling over the summer that made it kind of difficult to get that done because reptiles are cold-blooded, so it got hot in here, and that amped up his metabolism, and he got not aggressive towards me, but he was biting the target, and it wasn't his fault. His metabolism was just so high, he was running at 100 miles an hour, you know what I mean? Just
Right.
redlining. So,
Yeah, because I imagine that with them being cold-blooded, all the cold-blooded animals up here are harder to take care of from that
right, yeah,
standpoint.
it's actually kind of tricky when the heat kicks on or the air kicks on, you know, the transitional periods. We got to keep a close eye on them, and we check their temperature and humidity every day because that's something that's really important with most of your reptilians.
Yeah, and in a big building like this, it's probably a little bit harder to control the temperature.
Right, and you know, this building is relatively old. It wasn't meant for housing animals,
Right,
so we
right.
do the best that we can.
Yeah. Reptiles always fascinated me. I didn't realize that you could even condition them even as much as you were saying with to follow the tennis ball. I thought that they were pretty much untrainable in any way. So that's interesting.
Yeah, monitor lizards are pretty intelligent from my understanding at zoos. They're pretty much, they can target train them and things like that. They can spot train them so they can have like a special mat or something, special painted area on the floor, and they can tell them to go there.
Oh,
and
wow.
they will. There's a lot of applications for that in a zoo, you know what I mean? If you can teach your animal to walk over and touch, that helps with taking blood draws or
Sure.
all kinds of medical procedures, examinations, that kind of thing.
Yeah. Because you get a dog or a cat, and you bring it into the house or into your life, and they're relatively simple to take care
Right.
of compared to zoo animals. And I'm sure that every different animal has a specific need that's less easy to handle than, say, a domestic pet.
Right. Well, the biggest challenge with a lot of these, the herps, the reptiles and amphibians, is the cold-bloodedness. You
Okay.
have to make sure they have heat, and you have to make sure their humidity's right, or it can affect their ability to shed their skin and other things.
Wow. And how long have you been interested in animals and zoological
So
science?
when I graduated high school, I attended Akron University for electrical engineering. But between my graduation of high school and my first semester at Akron, I worked at the Marshall County Animal Shelter. I loved it. If you're going to get a dog or a cat, get it from Marshall County. They're the best shelter around. And, you know, I'd always had dogs and cats, and we live on a farm. We don't really have many farm animals. We had horses at one time. We had chickens at one time. But I'd always had a passing interest in animals. But that really, really piqued my interest working at the shelter. So I started at Akron, and I realized I didn't want to do that much math for the rest of my life. So
right.
I decided to figure out what I wanted to do. And then I heard about West Liberty was starting the zoo science major, and I thought that sounded cool. And then, when was it? Not this past December, but the December before, I started working at Play and Stay Pet Camp
Okay.
in Peters Run in Wheeling, and I loved it there. They taught me a lot. I don't work there any longer, but the owner, Jess, her last name, Jessica Barclay, she was a huge influence. She was a really good mentor, taught me a lot about training. You have to take courses on dog body language there, which isn't directly applicable, obviously, to these animals.
Sure.
They're not dogs, but it really trains you to pay attention to the body language of animals.
Right.
Which was really, really helpful. So.
And it obviously helped further your enthusiasm and interest for the animals.
Right.
I know when I was younger, we had a boxer, and completely wild, 60 pounds, found it wandering the streets of Dayton, put it into my car and took it home, put up some flyers. Nobody would take him. And so my girlfriend at the time, we said we need to enroll him in, we called it dog school. and I just from that one class, I mean, we went probably every weekend for 10 weeks. What I learned about animals and the proper way to condition them, and I thought it was really fascinating. And I enjoyed the process of taking this dog that would literally jump up on the counter and walk across the dirty dishes in the sink and eat out of the pots on the stove if they weren't super hot.
Right.
And a 60-pound dog, to the point where we were able to get him to where he could function within the household and not be disruptive. And
Right.
and actually was very obedient and happy, and learning about how they're conditioned to live naturally and trying to work within the way they are built mentally, and individually even. I thought that was really interesting.
Right. It's amazing to me after knowing what I do now, how many people have basically feral animals living in their home that they just put up with.
Yeah.
It's incredible.
Yeah. I would literally have to wrestle. We just play around and wrestle every single day until I could beat him. Not beat him, beat him up, but just so that basically I would get him to lay on the ground and not move. Mm-hmm. And when I got to the point where I could stand over top of him and eat a sandwich, and he would just lay there quietly until I said to get up, then he knew that I was the boss. And I guess with dogs, as long as they know who the boss is, then they don't try to fight to be the boss. But when it's up in the air, they think of it as a competition. And
the other thing people don't understand about dogs in particular is a lot of times they think in behavior chains. So when your dog, wakes, like my dogs do, I'm trying to break them of this right now, when they wake me up at 2 a.m. to go outside and they're scratching at the door and barking, and then my dog Banjo jumps up and slams the storm door and makes it fly open so that he can get out before I let him out, he doesn't understand that that's a bad behavior. He thinks, oh, when I want to go outside, I run over to the door and I bark like a maniac, and then Eli opens it, and then I smash open this storm door, and now I'm outside.
Right.
So it's teaching the dog that, you're going to sit by the door, you're going to wait for me to open the door, and then you're going to go outside, and that's what happens when you go outside.
Right. And I think once you figure that out, everybody's happier. Right. I don't think they mind waiting by the door or pushing through the storm door. Either one's probably fine with them, as long as everybody's getting along and everybody's happy. I think they're happy.
Right. They know that's how they make the door open.
Yeah.
And it doesn't matter how they do it to them as long as the end goal is the same.
Yeah. The one of the other interesting things that they taught me was, if you say, for example, you have the command to sit, you say it once, and then there was a little technique they taught me where you tuck the tail to make them sit, and the idea was you only say it once, and then they sit, because if you say it 3 times, then they think, is it the 6th time, or
Right, and then they don't know, sit to a dog is a completely different word than sit.
Right.
There's some trainers who recommend you don't use the dog's name at all unless it's an emergency, because they know if they hear their name, they need to get where you are right now.
That's a great plan. Yeah. It is amazing how quickly they adapt to that. And without somebody actually teaching us, there's no way I would have ever been able to do it. I know when we first walked in, he was pulling at the chain at every dog in there, and I thought, there's no way. Mm-hmm. And they were showing us the first day of class that they'll roll a ball in between a row of dogs, and that your dog will be able to go down, pick up the ball, and come back and not be distracted. And I was just laughing. I'm like, there's no way this beast is ever going to be able to do that. But by the end, and it was great, because then when we'd have to go to the vet and we'd walk in there, he was calm. He knew how to handle that situation, and taught me a lot of respect for the whole idea of being able to train a dog properly, and there's certainly wrong ways and right ways of doing it.
Right.
And it comes down to science, really, the understanding how they're built to think,
right,
and to act. And when you work according to that, you can really do some amazing things. Mm-hmm. So ideally, you said you'd like to work for, what was it again?
DNR, or
Department of Natural Resources,
the Fish and Wildlife, something like that, doing field work.
So research, or a ranger, or
I would be open to anything. Yeah. It sounds kind of corny, and I know I'm a 20-year-old and I'm naive and idealistic, and I believe as long as I'm kind of aware of that, it's okay.
Yeah, I think it's.
But I wrote on my application for this program, I don't care what I end up doing with this degree, as long as I am able to help animals and help preserve the nature of West Virginia in particular.
That's a great goal.
With all this oil and gas stuff coming through, I see so much being done that just sickens me. And I understand people, it creates a lot of jobs. People need oil and gas. There is, a call for that.
Sure.
But there's a pipeline going through behind my house, and it's eminent domain, and it's blowing right through our pasture field, right where my parents had planned for the probably close to 20 years we've lived there to build their next house.
Yeah.
and now there's a pipeline there, and there's nothing they can do about it.
Wow.
So as long as I can do my best to make sure that the nature and the natural resources of West Virginia in particular, but just in general, are preserved, then I'll be satisfied.
Well, I think that's actually well thought out for especially a person of your age. You have a pretty broad goal that allows you many ways to achieve it and to at least work towards it. A number of different jobs that you could have that would service that goal.
Right.
And also, I think, it is realistic to understand that gas and oil, we all like our lights on and our cars to move in, so there's energy needs of the world. But at the same time, there's a safe way to do it, and you got to find the balance to where you're not totally killing the environment.
Right.
And I kind of have the same concerns. I don't hate on what they're doing, but at the same time, I think that there's a fine line between where you're being overly destructive to the environment and where you're being conscientious.
Right. We obviously can't all go out and buy a Tesla tomorrow and start driving electric cars.
Right.
And even if we did, the
electric comes from somewhere.
Right. So I understand that there is definitely a need for it, but I think it's important that it's done ethically
Sure.
and with as little impact to the environment as possible, and at the same time working towards more sustainable, renewable energy sources.
Yeah, and that is also important.
Right.
Because the way I see it, there's a lot of money being made from taking these resources out of the area. So some of that money should be spent making sure that it's done properly, slow down a little bit. I'm all for companies making profits so that they can stay viable, but it should never be at the risk of long-term harm to the environment. And one of the things we don't know, I guess, is how some of these practices will affect the environment.
Right, and to their credit, Williams Energy actually funded the project for this room. So all this,
that's awesome.
All this, the enclosures and everything in here, and I believe all the new tables and everything. This used to be a chemistry lab, and now it's holding animals. So
yeah. It's a cool room.
To their credit, they're investing money in zoo science and applied conservation that will help bridge the gap once they're gone.
That's good. That's it. If the companies are being conscientious and working towards that same goal, I think that ultimately makes the chance of success that much better.
Right.
And I know that obviously studying things on a major level and an overall impact, but you probably find a lot of information when you study one specific area. It kind of can be an early warning sign of other things and you guys probably know that. If you notice that this certain frog isn't doing as well, that means that the ripple effect.
Dr. Why am I drawing a blank on his name? Dr. Loafman. He's actually the program coordinator for the zoo science program, and he is one of 6 biologists in the country who studies crayfish. His lab's right downstairs.
Yeah, you were kind of, yeah.
And, not a lot of people realize this, but Appalachia is probably the most diverse area in terms of crayfish in the entire world.
That's cool.
So that's actually, there's a lot of stuff going on with the oil and gas that affects that, and they're also a barometer of sorts for how well the environment is doing in relation to that.
Wow. So why do you think that's, or maybe why the population of crayfish is so diverse in this area? Is it the landscape, or? Yeah,
I think, and I've never taken his freshwater eco stuff. This is just my understanding of it. There's so many isolated little tiny watersheds in Appalachia that it allowed for a lot of different places, to become isolated, and for those mutations that eventually lead to speciation to take place.
So yeah, they get cut off from everybody else,
right.
And then for a long enough period of time, they evolve. I find that the evolution of the different species, especially when they get isolated. I think it's maybe in the Amazon, there's certain deer that learn how to swim because at one point they got locked into an area, and maybe they don't necessarily fish, but they have unique swimming abilities for a deer.
I've never heard of that,
Yeah.
but it sounds plausible.
And there's an island somewhere where I guess this pride of lions got separated, and the primary food source was it would be bigger, like a bison, but not a bison. I'm trying to think of what it is in the
Water buffalo, maybe.
probably water buffalo. Yeah. So over the generations, they evolved to where the females are bigger than their male cousins, on the mainland, and the males are just ridiculously huge because of just years. And it's probably must be a fairly decent size island, but they're separated from everybody else, and they just kept getting bigger and bigger and bigger because that was basically all that there was to eat. I'm
Right.
sure after a while they killed all the little animals or whatever, but yeah, evolution is crazy.
Yeah.
How it can take even within smaller regions, smaller
Right.
animals. Yeah. So reptiles, is it easy to or hard to get attached to them? Because for me, I've always been afraid of snakes, and they're obviously not as warm and cuddly. Do you find the same attachment to them as you do a mammal?
There are definitely some that are more charismatic than others. Norbert he's a rock star. He's like our big scaly puppy dog. I actually have put him on leash a few different times throughout the summer and taken him out on the quad.
Really?
Yeah,
you could take them out.
He's awesome. Some of the other reptiles, you don't feel that same, warm, fuzzy cuteness
Yeah.
at first, but eventually you get to learn their personalities and everything. They're just not quite as dynamic as mammals or even some birds, stuff like that. But eventually, before I came here, I was one of those hillbillies that would have shot every snake he saw.
Right.
But I actually, before I came here, I was doing field work. My project in field biology this semester is catching snakes and taking measurements and releasing them down on North Fork. So.
Well, I'm glad it's you and not me, because I'd be going back into engineering if I had to catch snakes. But it is now. Were you afraid of snakes when you were younger?
Yeah.
Were you? Okay.
I wasn't like I was. I wouldn't run screaming away from them, but I wouldn't touch them, and I would probably go get something and try to kill it.
Yeah. I have a friend. We were doing something, and there was a snake in the wood pile. It wasn't hurting anybody, but other than it was just freaking everybody out. So he just went over and got it and like walked it into the woods, and he had no problem picking it up, and everybody else was like jump back even just when he grabbed it, just because
Yeah, I mean they can't. Most of them won't bite you even if you pick them up. They're terrified.
Yeah.
And even if they do bite you, save the venomous ones, a lot of them don't really hurt. Their fangs are designed to puncture quickly, and
I think for me it's just something maybe innate, like
Probably.
a survival instinct.
Yeah.
I'll see one on the bike path all curled up, and I'll go around it. Not that I'll have any fear that it's going to hurt me or anything.
Right.
It just creeps me out.
There's definitely something primitive there.
Yeah. And but somehow some people seem to have different wiring when it comes to. I know for me, spiders don't bother me at all.
Mm-hmm.
And I was following one of my friends one day in the car, and he stopped the car in the middle of the street and got out and started jumping around. And I pulled up next to him, like, "What is wrong with you, boy?" And he said, "There's a spider in my car." I'm like, "Be a man, get in your car. Come on, let's go." But what I related to, if there was a snake in my car, or even mice and rats, kind of freaked me out a little bit.
Mm-hmm.
Squirrels don't bother me, but I don't. I guess that all comes back to maybe it's genetic or early childhood experiences.
Right.
So in an ideal world, is there specific animals that you would like to study long term, you think?
So I really like canids because of the time I've spent with dogs. So that would be like wolves, coyotes, that kind of thing. But the thing is, so does everybody else. They're big and they're charismatic, and I don't even know how many, but I'm sure there's a lot of research being done on canids right now. So it's kind of about keeping an open mind and kind of finding the niche that needs filling.
Yeah.
So that's what Dr. Loafman did. When he went to graduate school, he wanted to be a herpetologist. He's super into snakes. That's part of the reason why we have so many herps here, is because he loves them. but one of his classmates was catching snakes in traps, and she just kept getting traps full of crayfish. So finally she set a bucket of crayfish down on his desk and said, figure out what these are. And he eventually came to realize, West Virginia has people that study and specialize in all kinds of different animals, but nobody was studying crayfish. And he saw an opening there, and there are publications flying out the door of his lab, and he's named several new species. And part of it is because he's good at what he does. He's a very capable researcher, but also part of it is because nobody's ever bothered to do it before.
Wow.
So just finding a niche that needs filling and working on it can. Yep, that's
good way to make sure that you kind of have a solid career. And I imagine once you get into any field, if you're already kind of interested in the science in general,
right,
that as you study it more and more, it becomes interesting, and you learn learn more about it, because now you have a chance to kind of there's a lot of unknowns for you to figure out, and I mean I think that's kind of what a lot of people seek.
Yeah, and he doesn't begrudgingly study crayfish. As he studied them more and more, he comes to really appreciate them, and they're his favorite animals in the world now.
Yeah, and isn't that funny how you would never think that you might be interested in something, and one day, sometimes by odd circumstances, that lady setting the bucket on his table and kind of changes the direction of his life, or even with you, where you had that summer job, and
right,
it takes you in a direction that you hadn't thought of before. I think that in life in general, people that are able to recognize that it's okay to stop everything and go in another direction and kind of listen to what you really want, listen to your heart. I mean, that's important. I think that'll serve you well.
Right.
So I want to kind of move on to another topic, but we can definitely come back to that if anything else comes to you. You're a runner, which I didn't realize that until the last few weeks there. Juju, one of our coaches, was talking to you about getting ready for the races. And you ran 2 races this last weekend. 3? Holy cow. So what was the first one?
It was the Spartan Beast.
And explain what that is for people who don't know.
So the Spartan races are a series of obstacle races. If anybody's familiar with like Tough Mudder, it's a similar thing, but it's more intense. So Tough Mudder is just, they call it a challenge. There's no time. You can skip all the obstacles that you want to or need to. It's just about getting it done. The Spartans are more strict. They have an open division that's more like the Tough Mudder, but you get a time. If you fail there are certain obstacles that are mandatory. Yeah. If you fail an obstacle, you have to do 30 burpees.
Oh, wow.
So I ran the Beast on Saturday, which I actually didn't realize it until after I signed up, but they have a pro circuit, and this was the United States Championships.
Was it really?
So it was pretty much the hardest race that they have. From my understanding of it, this was my first Spartan experience. I'd done a couple other obstacle races, but never a Spartan. But I know some people who are in the know, and apparently the only course that was harder than this was the one in Wintergreen, Virginia. And they actually replaced the one in Wintergreen with this one this year. So It was at the Boy Scout Reserve in Glenjean, West Virginia. The Beast was 15 miles, better than 20, maybe better than 30 obstacles, at least around 30 obstacles. I can't remember the exact number. 3,700 feet in elevation climb.
Wow.
Yeah. And then that was Saturday. And then Sunday, I ran the Super, which was 8 miles, 25 obstacles, and 2,300 feet in elevation.
Holy cow.
And then the sprint was after that. So that was 4.7 miles, around 20 obstacles, and around 1,000 feet in elevation.
Wow. So how do you train for that?
Obviously, it's different than a lot of other races, especially like the Tough Mudder, because the Tough Mudder, they're kind of spread equally throughout. The obstacles are kind of spread equally throughout the race. And I did the Bone Frog in Ohio this past year, and there was a little bit of running to start out, but they kind of spread out the obstacles more. And the Spartans are backload them extremely with the obstacles. So you have to be a good runner,
Yeah.
and you have to be good at obstacles. But running is key, because if you can get ahead of everybody else, it gives you more time on the obstacles.
Yeah.
So just getting out there and trail running and putting in a lot of volume is what I had to do. The obstacle stuff, heavy carries are something that I would recommend to a lot of people. I did a lot of farmers carries with kettlebells. We have an Atlas ball at Crossfire, and I would pick it up. And one of the obstacles it's called Atlas. You carry an Atlas ball down roughly 10 yards to a flag, do 5 burpees, carry it back. So I would just do that. I would set a 10-minute timer and just AMRAP it as many rounds as possible, just doing that with the Atlas ball. And I killed all the heavy carries. There's a bucket carry, a sandbag carry, there's that Atlas ball carry, and a log carry. And I didn't get through them as fast as I could, because there's a lot of people doing it and it kind of clogs up.
Right.
But I was booking it through those heavy carries. I had those.
You had them down.
I had them nailed. A lot of the stuff that gave me trouble was upper body stuff, which I've been having some shoulder issues. And I'm a bigger guy. I'm 6'3" and 215. So it's a lot harder for me than some smaller people. The people that are really good at Spartan racing, guys like Hobie Call, Ryan Atkins, I can't think of his first name, Killian's his last name. They're little dudes. They're 150, 160 pounds, and they're really good runners.
Yeah.
So,
yeah, just the running alone. I guess for people that run marathons or whatever,
right.
15 miles might not seem a lot. In fact, Deb Klempa was telling me that Joe ran 12 miles the other day, and that's usually nothing for him. I'm thinking 12 miles. That's a long drive for me to work in the car in the morning.
Well, it's not the 15 miles. It's the 3,500 feet that gets you. I mean, I joke around. I was born in Wheeling, and I grew up in Shadyside, so I kind of consider myself a de facto West Virginian.
Sure.
But even at my home in Shadyside, I was always running up and down the hollows growing up, and I spent a lot of time on Fish Creek and downstate. So I consider myself a pretty good holler climber. I was passing people going uphill, but that was what was brutal.
Yeah. That's a lot of elevation.
Yeah, you're not going to run that. You kind of got to power hike it. And
coming
downhill's really fun if you know how to do it, because it's super technical. There's a lot of it's a lot like mountain biking. You got to kind of see your line and pick it. And there's this hill you might have to bounce down or just kind of slide down to this tree and grab onto it and use it to throw yourself toward the next tree and jump over this log. And it's really technical, but it's really fun.
I used to, where I grew up, there was a lot of woods and hay fields, and we would do that. We would stand up the top of the hill, and there's a creek at the bottom, and there was a certain way, because the leaves would be piled up, so it was kind of thick, and you could slide down part of the way and then take a couple steps, like you said, grab around a tree, and then you had to walk back up to the top again to do it. But I could see where that part would be a lot of fun. But man, talk about endurance. How long did it take you to do the longest one?
So I think that one took me about 5 hours and 15 minutes. I came out way too hard on that one. I looked down at my, I have the GPS watch on.
Yeah.
And I saw that I was running a 7-minute 30-second mile pace. And I thought that read 7.3 miles. So I just dropped the hammer. I thought, wow, I'm already halfway through this. I need to just get on it. I feel great. And I got over, I think it was the first wall, which was 6 foot tall, and I hit the ground, and I look up, and there's a mile marker that says mile 4. So by the end, I was beat. I burpeed 2 obstacles that I ended up getting in the other 2 races because I was just so tired.
Yeah. Wow. The 30 burpees, for people that don't do burpees, that's a lot. In the middle of a race, that's brutal.
And that's another thing I trained. I just started doing a cash out at the end of every workout, just 30 burpees. And just having familiarity and kind of that muscle memory helps a lot.
It does. I know there's certain exercises that we do at the gym that we maybe don't do that often. They're a lot harder when we do them sporadically. Now some of the stuff like squats that we do constantly, we're able to just knock them out when you have to.
There's actually a concept called Grease the Groove. Some people might have heard of it, by a guy named Pavel Tsulin. So he's the guy that popularized the kettlebell in the United States. He was the trainer for the Spetsnaz when they existed, when the Soviet Union still existed. But his whole thing is that it's not all about muscle volume and hypertrophy. It has a lot to do with developing your neural connections in your muscles. So he says to do roughly 50% of your maximum reps, just, so it's easier to explain with an example. So if you have a pull-up bar, one of the door frame ones that go over your door, maybe every time you walk under it or once an hour, if you can do 10 pull-ups, just walk over and do 5 and quit. And it starts to develop that muscle memory, and your neurons with that movement become more efficient. Is his theory. And with the burpees, it helped me a lot.
Yeah, I could see that where you lock in that rhythm of how to do some, especially a burpee where there's a bunch of different movements to it. If you can get it to where you can kind of do it without thinking, and I can see where not doing it to exhaustion all the time, but just doing throughout the day. If you did even 5 every hour throughout the day, that adds up. You could easily get 100 in a day. And over the course of a couple weeks, that's thousands of burpees that now when you go to do one, you almost don't have to think about it. I probably need to do that with jump rope because I have no ability to jump rope consistently. I'll get 50 in a row sometimes, and other times I'll get 3 in a row. And then you'll hear me yelling and throwing the jump rope on the ground and just wait until the clock says to do something else. Like maybe the next round I'll do better. I know I don't always get my number in because I'm like I'll never finish if I have to get 150 in. Because I'm stalling out.
A lot of that in particular just has to do with having the proper size jump rope too. You'd be surprised how much of a difference that makes.
and I think a lot of times I'll be doing good and somebody will say, "You're doing good," and I'm like, "Yeah, I'm doing good." And then that and bench press, for some reason, having that bar above me freaks me out. And I know we were doing bench press the other day, and my spotter, I couldn't see him, so I think we were only doing 3 with a pause at the bottom, and the first 2 I was fine, and then I was conscious of the fact that there was no spotter, and I'm like, spotter! and I think before I had been able to do 3 in a row, so there was physically no reason to be able to get 3 in a row. And I find, they can come in. A little background noise is no problem.
The door might be locked. Oh, she got it.
Hi. So I noticed that a lot of the stuff is mental, and for me, one of the nice things about doing CrossFit is that it's taught me like that mental toughness, where you can be completely winded in the first 5 minutes of a 30-minute workout and keep going. And my whole life, once I got winded, I was like, well, I'm done. Maybe go a little bit past the point of where you feel like you're exhausted, but the ability to realize that you're not even close to being depleted. Of course, Michael K. has many times pushed me way further than I thought I could go. But and then you take not only the physical strength, but I think what you take the rest of the day, the accomplishment.
There's an adage used by the Navy SEALs. It's called the 40% rule, and they say when you think you're physically done, you've really only used about 40% of your ability.
And sometimes I think that, and I'm like, damn it, that's true, but I hate that. Man, you got to have a good sense of confidence running those races, especially 3 of them in one weekend.
Well, the thing is I knew I would finish. I knew they would have to drag me off that course to keep me from finishing. And I also knew, realistically, that I wasn't going to be competitive. So there was really not a whole lot of risk involved. It was just going out and doing it. I mean, it sucked. But I'm not super fast and I'm not super strong, but I can suffer. So
I think just the fact that you started it and you finished it, that's a major accomplishment, because there's a lot of people, including myself, that I'm not so sure that. I mean, I imagine one of them I might have at 9 o'clock in the evening drug myself across the line, because I may take a break, but I generally don't quit.
But
But yeah, that just sounds so brutal. Of course, you've been training hard for it, so even though it was grueling and it took over 5 hours, you're kind of prepared for it in a way that people that don't work out or don't train for it are. It just sounds like torture,
right?
From where I'm sitting.
And I don't mean to be arrogant or brag or anything, but let's see, about a year and a half ago, I was 325 pounds.
Were you really?
So I'm not special.
Yeah.
It's just consistency and effort.
Working hard towards
right.
the goal. So you were 325. What are you now?
About 215.
Okay, because I was 310 at one time, and now I'm 225. So
good for you.
Yeah. So was it running, or what helped you the most?
It started out with running and just cleaning up my diet a lot. I just downloaded Couch to 5K, and I tried to stay as consistent with that as possible.
Now, what's that?
It's a running app for your phone that basically trains you to be able to just finish the distance of a 5K. And then
Couch to 5K.
Couch to 5K.
Okay, right,
yes,
okay.
Yes. And then my mom runs with a group of people. They call themselves the Misfits that run out at bar camp on Sunday mornings. And I started going out with them and running. And I eventually got into a lot of bodyweight calisthenics stuff because, I did that Tough Mudder last September, and I realized that that's the sport I wanted to do.
Yeah.
Now,
how much
cool.
did you weigh when you did that one?
Probably about 280.
Okay.
Yeah.
Yeah. So you're still pretty big.
Right, but I don't have to, I don't have to be able to bench press 500 pounds. I just have to be able to, do 20 pull-ups.
Right.
To be able to be competitive. So I started doing a lot of calisthenics because I was worried about relative strength, and I eventually way overused my shoulder and jacked it up.
Yeah.
So I started at OV CrossFit around Christmas break this past semester, and they really know what they're doing there. But it was just a little too intense of an environment for me. Crossfire was really laid back and stuff, so I started going there, and I noticed huge improvements in everything, in my strength, and I got way faster since I started going there.
I noticed that with you can come in. Working with Michael and Beth, and we were actually had a little conversation this morning where they're always looking at new techniques and new ways of training, and Michael was talking about the 10 seconds on, 20 seconds off, reverse Tabata, and you hear of a new training practice, a new diet practice, try it. If it works, I like that they're real open-minded to everything.
Right.
I know for me, being that I'm older, I used to hit it really hard and try to go as heavy as I could, and was kind of gone for more as strong and to bulk up. And then I realized that I'm going to have joint pain when I get older if I'm not careful. And I was a little bit, my elbows were starting to ache a little bit, and my tendons, I think, were feeling stretched. So I just dialed back my weight and worked on my speed and intensity. And only when we're actually doing weight training, where we're doing 3 sets of 5 or something like that, that I do heavier weights. And otherwise, just that consistent form. And I try, when we have long workouts, I just try not to stop.
Right.
I just try to keep going, or if I have some kind of a rest period, I take a sip of water and get right back to it. And for me, I think the mental game of it has helped me in my life as much as being physically fit. Although it's nice to look in the mirror and go, wow, I have man arms and not boy arms. I mean, I was 310, but I had scrawny little arms for a big guy. It was built like a light bulb, and I hated it. And I think you're definitely on the right track, where if you can do a lot of pull-ups and a lot of squats, and then you can function in life, not only in competition, but just in life in general.
Right.
Those situations where, whether you're working under a car or you're out doing research out in the field or something, where if you need to pull yourself up, you have the right amount of strength and flexibility.
Right, that's the thing. I mean, CrossFit is, the idea behind it is to be prepared for everyday situations. Right. But, and I don't mean this to knock CrossFit, because obviously
we do.
Yeah, right. Yeah. But how many times in a real life situation, some sort of emergency situation, are you going to need to bench press 400 pounds?
Right.
But if you can bench press 225 pounds and you can do 20 pull-ups, that seems a lot more advantageous to me.
Yeah, I rarely do I lift anything over my head in real life.
Right.
But it's nice to know that you can lift over 100 pounds straight over your head. But yeah, functionally, being able to do pull-ups, push-ups, squats, sit-ups, any of those body movement things, that comes into play all the time. And lately, probably in the last 6 months or so, they've been really stressing flexibility, which is I'm starting more and more to get it into my head. That's such a big component.
Yeah, that's something I've been trying to work on because I'm a busy guy, and a lot of times that's the thing I'll cut out, and that's stupid.
Yeah, and it might be really the most important thing when you talk about just everyday life. You drop a pen on the floor,
right?
And it doesn't matter how strong you are. If you're stiff and you got to pick it up, it's painful.
Yeah. I mean, you could have biceps the size of watermelons, but if you can't reach over your head and get something off a shelf over your head, then what kind of quality of life do you have? You know what I mean?
Right. That I know. Now I didn't mind it because we had just done some hard workout. This was a few months ago, but I bent over to pick up a pencil at work, and I'm like, hey, can you pick that up for me? 'Cause I couldn't do it. I was so sore. But in general, just being stiff and those. No matter how strong you are, if you're not flexible.
Right.
So I like the program there. It's very well-rounded, and I think they push you to the right amount to do your best, but not to the point where you're going to hurt yourself. And it's been a good experience for me. So what was your diet like before when you were heavy, and what did any major things that you changed to lose weight?
I just eat whole foods.
Yeah.
Just if, it grew on a tree or on a plant of some kind, if it, had a face, had a soul, I'll eat it.
Yeah.
I don't eat bread that often. Rice and sweet potatoes are something that I will eat if I have a high training volume.
Yeah.
So, preparing for this race, I was, crossfitting 4 days a week and running at least 4 days a week. So I would have crashed if I didn't eat as many carbs as I needed to. But if you're not all that active, then I don't think there's a whole lot of need for things as carb dense as that.
Yeah. Okay.
I limit fruits. Again, like I said, if you're more active, then you're going to need more fruit. You're going to need more of that relatively quick glycogen, especially like after workout or something. Every morning after we CrossFit, I have a whey protein shake, 4 eggs, 4 hard-boiled eggs, and a piece of fruit of some kind. Now, whey protein plus 4 eggs may be kind of overkill as far as protein is concerned, but like I said, once again, when I have that much training volume and I don't get to eat that often because of the way my day's set up, sometimes you just have to shove it all in when you can. Right. But that getting that glycogen right after, well, it's sugar, you convert it into glycogen, but getting it right after your workout, I think is a good idea.
Yeah. And I think for me, it's been a constant process of just trying to dial it in of what I need and what I don't need. And for the longest time, I would eat steel-cut oats every morning before the gym, and then I realized that unless I get up, because I started going to the 6 a.m. class, and then now we have a 5 a.m. class, and I would have to get up so early to eat it so that it would even be effective once I got to the gym. And a little bit of research and the idea of working out on an empty stomach, which I thought was blasphemy at first. Like, I can't work out on an empty stomach. And then I started doing it and eating afterwards. And I found that actually that I didn't notice any decrease in performance, and actually it allowed me to sleep a little bit longer. And that oatmeal was probably digesting maybe the last 15 minutes of the workout, if I ate it right before I left the house or whatever.
Yeah, I work out fasted pretty much every morning. Yeah. So.
And there's even some research that says that it helps stimulate growth to work out fasting and then eat afterwards.
Right, I've read that before too. I tried the ketogenic diet for a while. It didn't work for me. My joints, I could just feel them starting to deteriorate.
Oh, really?
I don't know why. I don't have enough knowledge of biochemistry to be able to tell you why.
Right.
But I know that when I didn't eat enough carbs, my joints hurt.
Yeah.
So I started. I don't count calories or anything anymore. I'm kind of cognizant of how much protein I take in.
Sure.
And I just try not to limit anything. I just make sure I get plenty of good fats and plenty of carbs and plenty of protein, because I don't really care how I look. I care how I perform.
Sure.
So.
And that really is the most important thing, is that just to feel healthy.
Right.
I'm still probably 40 pounds overweight for what I'm supposed to be, maybe even more. But for people that have my same body size and shape, probably in a lot better shape than a lot of them, just because of our conditioning.
Right.
Certainly for someone who's got a few extra pounds in the belly, I can move pretty good compared to the rest of the world.
Right.
And I'd like to be able to take that off, but and you're absolutely right. I think just eating things that come directly from nature, the less that it's been touched by human beings before you eat it, as far as processing, that's kind of the general rule of thumb, because when it comes to health and nutrition, there's so much misinformation, and just not necessarily people that are that mean you harm, but they just don't really understand. And you also, definitely from gyms, I know, talking to people that go to other gyms, there's a lot of bro science out there where people have heard something and they hear it from a coach or someone, and they assume that that's scientifically based, or that maybe that worked for that one person, but it won't work for you. So I think that finding out what meets your needs the best is the proper way to eat. And for me, the simple explanation that I give to people that want to eat healthy is kind of what you said: anything that comes from the ground, that has a face.
Right.
I mean, people might be into vegetarianism, and that's okay, but for us to get enough protein to make our workouts really pay off, you got to eat a lot of protein, and flesh, meat is the only way to get it.
Right. I believe that we probably don't need near as many carbs as the government guidelines would suggest, and we
I agree.
we need more fat and more protein.
Yeah.
But I'm not one of those people who's like vehemently anti-carb. I think that's kind of ridiculous.
I somewhat limit my fruit, although when the Honeycrisp come in, I want to be all over them.
Yeah.
And the bananas, they're pretty high in sugar, so I kind of stay away from those. And any more natural carb, like a potato or something, or even like a quinoa or something like that, brown rice. Wonder Bread is the one that I stay away from. And sugar is the big thing that I cut out. Maybe it would have been in January of 2016. And the one thing that I noticed every time I go to the doctor for my 6-month checkup or whatever, I was always saying how my elbow hurt. And he said, well, maybe you have early arthritis, or, there's not really anything we can do about it, but we'll just keep up with it. I gave up sugar, and I went in for a visit, and he goes, how's your elbow? And I said, what are you talking about? He goes, you always said that your right elbow was aching like a toothache. I'm like, oh, yeah, it doesn't ache anymore. And if you're listening out there and you think, I can't give up ice cream and cakes and sugar and all that, you definitely can.
Yeah.
For the most part, I don't really miss it.
Well, and to be fair, on the weekends, for me, pretty much all bets are off.
Yeah.
But I do that deliberately, partly because I think to really appreciate how good you feel when you're eating healthy, you have to feel that transition. So definitely, by the end of Monday, after, picking out Saturday, Sunday, and I don't always, and I try to eat at least one healthy meal on those days, but you definitely, by the end of Monday, you feel, this is why I'm doing this.
Right,
what I mean? So
yeah, you start to feel better again once you adjusted your diet.
Right.
Yeah, I know for me, and again, that probably comes back more to the dialing in what works best for each person. If there's either a bunch of sugar all the time or no sugar at any time, as far as at least hardcore sugar like candy and cake and that. I know some people can eat like one piece of candy every day and they're fine, or even on the weekends kind of let go, and then Monday get right back on the train. And I wish my brain worked that way, but I kind of, now if I go, I guess my rule of thumb is more, if I go out to eat, I'm going to pay money to sit in a restaurant with my friends and have a nice meal. I'm going to get whatever I want.
Right.
When I'm at home, that's more of a controlled atmosphere, and it's, try to eat something that I enjoy, but it's also healthy because I have the time to cook it and be more thoughtful. And when I'm at work, I try to eat super healthy, because if you're sitting in a break room at work, you don't, it's not really that enjoyable of an experience no matter what you do. So that's when I just really kick in the kale shakes and the salads with tuna fish and take in a bunch of stuff that people at work, I can't believe you're eating that, but at least 3 days a week that I do it, I'm getting a really good meal. I mean, kale shakes are disgusting, but you feel like somebody just put a rocket in your veins. At least for me, they just fire me up. And I think a lot of that just has to do with having a good nutrient profile, where all the bases are covered.
Right. Yeah. It's really not that hard.
No.
There are people out there doing things a lot more amazing than I am. All I'm doing is not eating like an idiot and taking care of my body relatively frequently. So.
Sure. And I guess that's kind of our lifestyle now. So we think of it as just being normal. But for a lot of people, just that ability to show up to the gym in the morning consistently, or to consistently eat healthy for more than a couple weeks, is a lot of people find it difficult.
Right, and people have heard mind over matter so much, but I think there is something to the opposite to. If, I was diagnosed with ADHD when I was a kid.
Yeah.
We're not entirely sure that's what it is now, but I'm medicated for some mental health stuff.
Yeah.
But if I exercise and keep my diet clean, it's a sacrifice of a lot of time. I could be doing other things, and it's somewhat of an inconvenience, you know what I mean? My girlfriend, God bless her, she gives up a lot of time with me so that I can go run around in the woods and lift heavy things. But if I don't take care of myself in that way, then I notice everything else gets a lot worse.
I agree. A big part of just your happiness is, when we work out, it releases endorphins. I know, because me and you are 5 a.m. guys. There's a certain satisfaction of pulling into the gym when it's still dark outside and leaving sweaty when it's still dark out, and knowing that you did something that most other people
absolutely
don't do. And a lot of people tell me that I could never do that. They definitely could. I mean, when I started, I didn't sign up for the 5 a.m. classes. I gradually kind of worked into it. So was there a certain moment where you decided that, man, I just got to get healthy, when you were heavy, that you just said?
I was on blood pressure medication. I was 18 years old. That was less than ideal. But there wasn't really kind of an aha moment. I just, like I said, with the mental health stuff, I had really hit rock bottom, and I just decided to start taking care of myself.
Yeah.
And sure enough, it helped a ton. So.
Yeah. Same with me. Well, for me, it was Christmas time, and there's all this great food around. And I remember it was a big Christmas Eve family dinner, and they're like, "Why aren't you eating?" And I just felt so disgusted with that. I just didn't want, and I knew that we're just getting ready for 2 days of like feasting, and I'm just going to get even bigger, and that feeling of just angst and being upset, it lasted through the whole holidays and into January, and then I just saw some fad diet on TV one day when I was off, and I ordered the book from my Kindle because that happened to be sitting there, and the book came in. I said, well, I paid for the book, so I'm going to get the food, and I'm going to do this for 2 weeks. And I think it wasn't that specifically. It was just the fact that I was focusing on losing weight for 2 weeks.
Right.
And I just made that the only thing that I worked on, other than my job. And after 2 weeks, I lost a couple pounds. I think I lost like 9 pounds, because when you're 310, you take off weight pretty quickly.
Right.
And then, all right, I'm going to do another brick. And because when I thought about what ideally I needed to lose about 135, 140 pounds, it's a lot of weight. So I decided that, and I just kind of did it in chunks. And now I'm kind of, at a point where I feel pretty good, but I'd like to lose a little bit more weight, get a little bit stronger, but I can't keep up with you young guys at the gym.
Right, and right now my diet looks like I said, 4 eggs and a piece of fruit in the morning, then some sort of meat source, chicken, beef, pork. I'm not opposed to red meat. I
Yeah.
don't care. And then, you can buy those frozen veggies at the supermarket that steam in the bag.
Yeah,
And
those are
I'll
awesome.
make at least one of those and throw it in. And then dinner, whatever protein source my mom made, if she made veggies, I'll eat those too. And then a sweet potato with butter or something. But it didn't always look like that. A lot of it started out as just, I ate at the cafeteria in Akron. I would get a salad, and then I would get whatever else I wanted. So whatever volume was taken up by the salad, I wasn't eating junk. And
Right.
if I wanted a brownie, I had one brownie, and
Yeah.
that was it.
But you're already full from the salad, so
Right,
yeah.
and eventually it taped. So you don't have to go gung ho overnight, and
Yeah.
you know what I mean.
And I think probably when it comes to working out and eating healthy, one of the biggest mistakes people make is that they try to do all of it at once. And I always tell people, if you drink soda and you want to lose weight or just be healthier, that's a good thing to give up first, and gradually, add healthy things to your
Right.
diet.
Mm.
And I think actually the additive method rather than the subtractive method is probably increases your chance of success, where you just make sure that you eat tons of healthy food throughout the day. And if you have any room left over for a brownie afterwards,
Right.
more power to you.
Yeah. Me and my girlfriend tried the Whole30 once, and in an ideal world, if you're there's a lot of kids my age who go out and get jobs in tech and have plenty of disposable income and can buy, I don't know, all organic everything
Sure.
and spend $7 on a pound of ground beef, but that's not my situation.
Right.
So it just starts with doing what you can.
Yeah, and I think that is the most important thing. Is just always just work towards that goal the best you can, and a lot of times I think just modifying what you do till you find what works for you, and even after a while that kind of needs to change, and you switch it up and just constantly be looking for the most efficient path to get where you're going.
Right.
Well, man, it's great sitting down and talk to you. We see each
Yeah, this
other at
is
the gym
awesome.
all the time, but we rarely get a chance to talk more than to say hey. And like I said, I thought you were a welder for months before we actually I found out that you do this,
Right.
And that you're even a student, and you got a new job, right?
Yeah, I just started working at Goldbach Chiropractic in Elm Grove. So,
yeah, good. So it all ties in with what you're doing.
Right,
at the gym and-
that I'll learn more, hopefully, that'll be applicable to my training.
Good. Well, man, thanks again. And for everybody listening, thank you for listening. And until the next time, see ya.
All right.
All right, man. Thanks.
Thank you.